Hi, everyone. I'm Hernandez, as said, and I'm going to talk today about social networks and whether we can fix it. The clicker is not working. All right, that's me. So the first step towards trying to, find a solution to a problem is to understand it. Like, how did we get there? And what do I mean when I say social media specifically? So I'm going to do a quick recap of how we got there, and then let's see how that turned out. So it started, of course, with, whoops. Oh, that didn't go well. All right. Spoiler alert. It started, of course, with forums. I mean, that was the first time that there was some kind of interaction between people. Before then, there was the online boards where people could post things. This in 1983. After that came, of course, Yahoo GeoMaps, which was the first time that people started to move away from being part of like a forum that you towards having your own page that you could put it. For example, if you were an IT person, you could put yourself in Silicon Valley, and that's how you would say this is me, like what defines me, like the interests that define me. After that came 6 Degrees. I'm not sure how many people here know 6 Degrees. Can you raise your hand if you know 6 Degrees? Oh, cool. So one person. Yeah, this one was probably the most influential social network to the current model that we have. It was the first one to have the concept of adding friends, posting things and having them comment on those, having a global search. Unfortunately, it died. There was only about 2% of the world on the internet at that point, so they were too soon. 5 years later came Friendster, and times were different. There were already 500,000 people on the internet, and thanks to the decreased stigma of online dating, they could catch more members, and they reached 1 million by 2002. So this didn't go unnoticed. There was Tom they had an online network of dating sites and gaming sites, and they took the opportunity to build another social network and use their existing platforms to boost it. So there came MySpace. And then in 2004 came Facebook. So it was originally intended to be, of course, a student directory for Harvard. And, the first versions lacked a lot of features, but they had some interesting things into it. It was the first time that you could see who your mutual friends were with other people, so that you could kind of hop along the network endlessly and see who was around you. Then there was also, oh, that's a bug. I don't know what's going on. There was something else. The clicker is not working. Oops. Something else, which was the wall. So before then, existing social platforms had private messaging. This wasn't such a unique feature, but Facebook didn't. So what they did instead was that they had this wall that all interaction had to be performed in the wall. So it was the first time that in social media, what used to be private interaction became public. Yes. By the end of 2005, most of the US college campuses were already in Facebook. You had to use a student account to join it. But that changed on 2006, where Facebook became public. And at that point, the main rival to Facebook was, of course, MySpace, but they were doing things like this, and also doing some of this, like filling the website entirely with ads. And also, they were not very focused in what they wanted to be. They were trying too many things, not enough focus. So Facebook seized the moment, and by 2009, MySpace turned into another completely different company. But while Facebook and MySpace were beating each other around 2006, there came another player into the scene, Twitter. And at that point, a lot of companies had already noticed Facebook and MySpace and kind of like the model of having friends and comments and everything, and they were trying to replicate it. But Twitter didn't want to do that. Twitter wanted to do something drastically different, very specific. So short messages on a stream, like really fast interaction between people. They also introduced something big in what we know of social media today, which was the concept of following. So this turned out to be what complemented the model into providing a metric to what your social status on social networks is. In 2007, Facebook introduced ads. And you might say, well, ads already existed in MySpace and other social networks, but they introduced a specific kind of ad, which back then, even Mark Zuckerberg said it, that it was a completely new way of advertising online. It was the first time that they were using personal data to target people with advertisement. And this was sooner than Google, sooner than Twitter. They were the first ones to do this in a mainstream platform. Here's just a screenshot of like Google when they started in 2009 with this, so 2 years later. So what this also triggered is that, okay, so that was a way to make money with social networks. So basically engagement equals more data, equals better targeting, equals profit. Basically engagement equals profit. So, apart from this, the last thing that occurred in to build a picture of what social media is today was likes. Back then, in 2009, there was no concept of likes, neither in Twitter, in Facebook, or MySpace. It was another company called FriendFeed, which they noted that there were this explosion of social networks that it was too hard to keep track of everything that was going on. So they came up with a single unified timeline where you could like the best posts across networks. But Facebook acquired it in 2009, and that's how likes came to be. So it's 2009. There's public interaction, there's ads, there's likes, there's followers, there's timelines, and there is the notion, not notion, like concept of engagement equals profit. So what happened since then? Well, not much. Came Instagram with photo filters, Snapchat with stories, Vine with funny 5-second videos. And, but overall, the social model has remained the same. And even further, like companies like Twitter that tried to differentiate themselves back then by building something completely different or very specific are starting to look more and more like the existing platforms like Facebook. So why is that? Well, because it makes a lot of money. So it's 2019. What happened with that model of social networks? Well, public interaction turned into hate. And one of the most vulnerable in this case, it's teens. So before, if at school there was one bully, you were vulnerable to this bully at the school. Like chances are you meet him in the hallway, he might bully you. Well, now with public interactions being the de facto of social media, you're vulnerable to pretty much the entire world bullying you. Well, ads, the disruption of our society, just to put it slightly, with using fake news, spread misinformation, create polarization, other things. There's here are some funny fake ads that fueled pretty much Brexit. And well, likes, validation, and this is a big problem once again with teens. Is that when they're in that stage that you're looking for validation, you're trying to identify who are you in this world. Well, and likes being the measure, if you don't get enough validation, well, this happens. And followers became the de facto social status across the world. So it's not relevant anymore, like who you are or, how much of an expert you are in certain topics. Followers have become the de facto metric to how important your opinion is. And this has caused a lot of trouble because there's a lot of people with the wrong opinions abusing this on platforms to spread messages. And timeline became polarization. Basically, everyone gets an individual view of the world. And so when you go out there and interact with other people that have this completely different view of the world, and you cannot understand, like, everything that I see looks so different. So you polarize. You're going to have conflict between each other. But something has gone right, and that is engagement equals profit metric. This is 2 years back already, the stats. I couldn't find the last one, but back then it was a aggregated industry of $600 billion. So I think at this point, and given the last year and pretty much everything that has happened, we can agree that our current social media model is broken. And this is where I get the question, like the most obvious question, which is, okay, why don't social media companies break it? Well, because it's not broken for them. The reason they're making so much money and they're doing great is because of these models. Nothing spreads engagement like hate. So if it's not going to be the social media companies, then who is it? Well, then it's up to us, users, to fix social media. And so that's where OpenBook comes into play. So we thought, at this point, I hope you can already see that the current model that we have in social media was completely arbitrary. There wasn't a master planner or much analysis of how things could go wrong or any history of things that have gone wrong. So if we give it another go with the accumulated knowledge, where there's nothing to lose and much to gain. So that's what we did. And we started by, okay, let's eliminate the concept of users entirely. Just change it to people. So we set up to do this based on different principles. So the principles we set up to build the social network was transparency, the first one. So open book, all the source code is open source, like mobile app, web app, everything. And not only that, but also day-to-day planning, roadmaps, feature requests, everything is open. And apart from that, we're working on a dashboard to expose all of our activities, like all of the sources of income, all of the expenses, everything open all the time. There's also privacy. There's no tracking. And we're also making it easier to select the audience that you can share content with. And not only that, by the end of this year, we plan on encrypting the post in your timeline that you're sharing with the specific circles, like friends, family, or work. Apart from that, there's of course, you cannot have privacy if you don't have the security foundation. What we do is we do a lot of tests, security tests with every feature that we ship. We have almost 90% coverage of the whole code base, have metrics. Yeah. And another thing is that we're switching the focus from people trying to build followers to people trying to build communities. So, for example, we don't show personal posts in the public timelines. We show community posts. So we try to make it easy for people to engage in a discussion rather than just be a passive observer on social platforms. And not only that, with the sense of community, also like our community guidelines and moderation and everything is driven by the community. It's our guidelines were drafted by volunteers from the platform. There's also the aspect of mental health. Well, we made the followers count. We made the followers count optional and disabled it for everyone. We plan on disabling it on the future entirely. We want to see how would it play, and we've gotten some good feedback that it's more of a relaxing experience knowing that somebody won't judge your profile based on how many followers you have. And then for the moderation aspect, all of the public timelines, they're all community posts. So it means that there's an indirect layer of moderation with everything that gets exposed into everyone. So there's no chance of somebody posting something terrible and right now appearing to millions of people. And the revenue model, it's based on an optional subscription that you pay €4 per month, and you get access to themes and animated avatars and small things. So, and lastly, the sustainable growth. Like what you have seen so far with social media is that they go for high growth, no matter the consequences. What was it? Move fast, break things. So we're trying to do the inverse. We're trying to do slow growth and sustainable. So what we're doing is we're doing invite only forever. So if we get some challenges when we onboard 10,000 people, we first fix them and then we continue to onboard the next. And what if this all works? Well, we're also committed to give 30% of everything, of the profit, for good. This is in partnership with a non-profit from the UK that it's towards project of climate change prevention, education, and sanitization. So how does it look like so far? Well, we've been in alpha for about 2 months. We have 3,000 people, all of them pay to join the network. We have 1,500 communities ranging from everything, Game of Thrones to gardening. There's 25,000 posts. There's 40,000 people on the list. And everyone is really happy and engaged on the platform. So, how did all happen? Well, it's entirely crowdfunded. We did a crowdfunding campaign. We raised about 80K. And this is how it all was facilitated. So, the question was, well, can we fix social networks? Well, I don't know. That's a really catchy title and probably what got you here. But what I do know is that it is our moral duty to try. We're seeing the negative impact that it's having on our society, and especially us here in this room, which I imagine is hackers, engineers, designers. We know the tools required to do something about this. Yeah. And at the end of the day, social networks are a reflection of our society. So what kind of society do we want to be? Thank you. All right. I think you were a bit early. But,
yeah. Anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Is your content publicly readable?
There.
Facebook is constantly nagging you to log in to register.
No, it's publicly accessible. Like public posts, you don't need an account to read it or anything. So, yes. Any more questions? Yes.
Is there any encryption used?
Encryption use? We are working on getting encryption on the encircled post. So basically, when you're sharing to an exclusive audience, like your family or your work, that will be by August or end of the year. And also on the messaging side, we're gonna work here with Phil to get the same protocol used in silent phone on the chat app for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Is the encryption PGP based? No.
No.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
Last chance? Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to try it, as I said, it's invite only. So you can just let me know. I can give you an invite now and you can check it out. All right.
Yep. And as a reminder, slides will be available through the Hack in the Box website. And thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you.
All right.